Many long years ago, there lived an arrogant and cruel young lord who ruled over a small village in the western hills of Japan. "I have no use for old people in my village," he said haughtily. "They are neither useful nor are able to work for a living. I therefore decree that they must be banished from the village. Anyone over 71 must be banished from the village and sent into the mountains to die." The villagers were horrified at this decree. What a cruel lord! What a dreadful decree! They didn't want to take their parents to the mountains and leave them to die. But the villagers were even more fearful of what the cruel young lord would do to them if they did not obey his command. And so, one by one, the old people disappeared from the village, until there were none left. And the cruel lord looked at the village and said, "My village is now full of young, healthy, hard-working people. It will soon be one of the finest villages in all of Japan." Now, in this village, there lived a kind young farmer and his aged mother. They were poor, but the young farmer was good to his mother, and they lived together very happily. But as the years went on, the farmer's mother got older and older until she reached the dreaded age of 71. The young farmer didn't know what to do. He didn't want to take his mother up into the mountains and leave her to die. He wished there was some way he could deceive the Lord. But the village records were very clear, and everyone knew how old his mother was. She had turned 71, and they were beginning to talk. Soon the Lord would send his soldiers to drag the young farmer and his mother off to the dungeon to die a terrible death. The young farmer tried to speak to his mother. "Mother," he would begin, but he couldn't go on. He hadn't the heart to tell her what he must do. Then one day, the young farmer's mother brought up the decree herself. "Son, you must take me to the mountains before the soldiers come to take you away." She did not seem too troubled by the idea. So the young farmer said, "Mother, please forgive me for what I must do." The next day he hoisted her onto his shoulders and headed up the mountain. They walked and walked, up and up, until the path disappeared and they were surrounded by trees on all sides. The young farmer continued walking. He didn't want to stop and leave his mother alone to die. As they walked, he noticed that his mother was snapping twigs off the tree branches. "Mother, what are you doing?" he asked her. "I'm making a path so that you will be able to find your way home afterwards," his mother said. "Even now you are thinking of me?" said the young farmer with wonder. "Well, of course. I will always have you in my thoughts. That is the way things are," his mother said to him. At that point, the young farmer could go no further. "Mother, I don't care what the Lord does to punish me. I will not leave you alone here to die. I am taking you back home with me." And so that night, when the first stars began to come out, the young farmer and his mother slipped down the mountain and into their cottage. The young farmer dug a hole in the floor of the kitchen and made a secret room for his mother to stay in. He took her meals there, and the rest of the day he worked out in the fields as though he lived alone. And in this way they lived for 2 years, and he was able to keep his mother safe and hidden. But one day the young farmer went to the village and heard a great commotion. In the village square there was the Lord from over the hills, Lord Haiga, with his band of samurai. They were sitting up on their tall horses, and Lord Haiga was saying that he would come to conquer their village and make it his own. The villagers were all whispering in fear. What would they do if an even crueler lord took over their village? "There is one way your village can be spared," Lord Haiga was saying as the young farmer came up. "If you bring me a box of 1,000 ropes of ash, I will spare your village." Lord Haiga, with this declaration, rode off with his samurai. The cruel young lord of the village called together all the wise men of the village and said, "How is this to be done?" The wise men looked at each other. They scratched their heads. Finally one of them said, "Lord, there is no way to make even 1 rope of ash, much less 1,000. It is impossible." "Fools!" cried the cruel lord. "What good is your wisdom if you cannot help me now?" And he stomped off to the village square and put up a notice offering a reward to the person who could come up with a solution to this problem. All the villagers whispered together, "It is not possible. The moment you touch ash it crumbles to dust. You cannot make a rope out of it." The young farmer also bowed his head in defeat. What would he do? How could he protect his mother if an even crueler lord took over the village? When the young farmer arrived home that night, his mother said, "Son, what troubles you?" The young farmer explained about Lord Hyga and his impossible demand. "Oh, that is not so difficult," his mother said. "If you take a piece of rope and soak it in salt water, and then dry it very well, when you burn it, it will keep its shape, and then you will have a rope of ash. Run, go tell the villagers to gather together 1,000 pieces of rope." "Mother, you are so wise," said the young farmer, and he ran off to the village to tell the young lord what must be done. The young lord was amazed at the wisdom of the young farmer. He ordered that the villagers gather 1,000 pieces of ash and prepare them to be sent to Lord Hyga, and he rewarded the young farmer with many pieces of gold. The box was made and sent, and the village was spared.